Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about something that is, I think, universally dreaded, and that is preparing for a job interview. I myself have interviewed for jobs, but I've also been on the other side of it and had to interview people for jobs. So I've kind of seen both sides, and I can assure you that for everybody involved, the job search is overwhelming, it's stressful, and it's time consuming, but it's a part of life, and it's not something that I think is going anywhere anytime soon. And being able to ace a job interview is definitely a skill and an acquired skill, but the good thing about skills is they can be practiced. And I know this year has been tough on so many people with losing jobs, but hopefully if you're watching this video, it means that you have an interview coming up soon and you're on your way to being gainfully employed. So I hope these tips can help you out with acing your interview. So let's just go ahead and get started. I actually want to start with the most important takeaway first. If you take away nothing else from this video, this is what I want you to take away, and that's be confident. If you have a job interview, that means that they saw your resume, sometimes out of hundreds of other people who applied for this job, and saw something about it that they liked or that intrigued them. So that's already a win for you. And trust me when I say that the people who are interviewing you want you to be the perfect candidate so that they can stop searching. They want to hire somebody. That's their ultimate goal. So if you're the best person for the job, they can stop looking. So be confident and know that you deserve to be there. Now I want to talk about some virtual interview tips, since I feel like right now most people are doing job interviews virtually. So let's start with those before we go on to some general and in-person interview tips. Number one, double check the time of your interview, especially in times like these where people are all over the country, all over the world. Make sure you know what time zone your interviewer is in. If they're sending you a link to a Zoom from New York and you're in California, make sure you know that you're getting on your Zoom at the correct time. You don't want to be 3 hours early, but you also don't want to be 3 hours late. So double and triple check that you have the right time for your interview. Tip number two, test out your technology ahead of time. I know I talk about this in all of my videos, but it's because we all know technology loves to not work when we need it to work the most. So test out your sound ahead of time, test out your camera ahead of time, your Wi-Fi. Make sure you're sitting at a spot in your home that gets good Wi-Fi signal. If you need to ask a friend or a family member if you could do a practice with them ahead of time to make sure that you have all the kinks worked out, to make sure that when you sit down for your interview, you feel confident that everything's gonna work. Make sure your computer's charged, make sure you have your charger handy. Make sure that you have everything all set up and ready to go to at least eliminate that category of stress before your interview. Tip number three, make sure the interviewers can see your face. I actually made an entire video on how to look better on camera, and not with makeup or hair or an outfit, but with lighting and camera angles. And I will link that up here and in the description box below as well, because it's so important that the people interviewing you can actually see your face, see that you're engaged, see that you're taking in their questions and thoughtfully answering them, hopefully. And if you're blurry or your face is dark and they can't see you, that's gonna distract them from all of your excellent qualifications and experience that you could bring to the table in this role. Tip number four, if your phone is connected to your computer, make sure you either turn your phone off or turn off notifications on your computer so that during the interview, a phone call doesn't come through your computer or text message notifications keep popping up. Because number one, it's gonna distract you and take you out of the conversation that you're having with your interviewer, but it could also distract the people who are interviewing you. Just like in a normal job interview, you obviously wouldn't have your phone out. You'd probably have it turned off in your bag. So I would suggest doing that in a virtual interview setting as well, or just making sure that stuff isn't gonna be popping up on your computer or on your Apple Watch that's gonna distract you from the focus of getting that job. Tip number five, get completely dressed. And yes, this does mean putting on real pants and not just sweatpants. This is gonna make you feel more confident and more prepared and more focused on the task at hand, which is obviously getting a job. Okay, now for some general tips that aren't just for virtual interviews. These are for in-person and kind of just general interview tips as well. Tip number 6, read over your resume. I know this sounds like a waste of time, but I promise you it will jog your memory about certain skills that you might have picked up at a previous job or a certain course you took if you just got out of college that might apply to this position. So you want those things to be top of mind. And also, if you are going to an in-person interview, make sure you print out a couple copies of your resume, because you never know how many people are going to be coming into the room to meet with you. So make sure you have at least a couple copies printed out to bring to them. Even if they don't ask for it, at the end you can say, would you like a copy of my resume? That's happened to me before where they never asked for it and I was like, oh, I brought a copy if you want it. And they're like, oh my God, yes, thank you. So make sure you have it. It shows that you're prepared, and obviously it's helpful for the people who are gonna be hiring you. And if you're gonna be sending your resume via email, make sure you save it as a PDF before you send it. Tip number 7 is write down your strengths. This is a pretty cliche interview question, but you might hear, what are your strengths, or what skills do you think you could bring to this team or to this specific position? So rehearsing some potential answers can help take some of the pressure off of trying to come up with something right on the spot. And if your interview is virtual, you can have a little list maybe sitting next to your computer of some strengths that you can glance down at if you maybe blank or you get really nervous and forget. So that's a nice option if you are doing a virtual interview. Once you write down your strengths and are familiar with them, write down how they could apply to that specific position. So look over the job description and kind of take out pieces that you think could really be a skill that this team could use. This might mean doing a little bit of research about the company, which you should be doing anyway, or looking on the company website to see what people are on the team. And sometimes there's a bio of the people on the team, so you can actually maybe get a sense of how you could fit in there and what you could bring to the table. Tip number 8 is rehearse your elevator pitch. I swear the first question in every interview is, so Claudia, tell us about yourself. And to me, this one's the most stressful because I'm like, what do I tell you? There's so many things. I've lived my life for 27 years. What do you want to know? So this one is a really good one to rehearse ahead of time. And hopefully it should be easy for you to rehearse since you hopefully already know your own story. It's just a matter of coming up with the little anecdotes that you want to include. It's honestly just the icebreaker that's going to start off the interview. So you don't have to go into your whole backstory, but maybe just where you're from, some of your previous jobs, or, if you're right out of college, where you graduated from, some things like that. Some other common questions are things like, why do you want to work here? What interested you about this position? Why did you apply to this job? So those are all questions that you can brainstorm ahead of time, write them down, and that way if they do come up in your interview, you have a sense of what you want to say and how you want to answer without trying to come up with something on the spot. Tip number 9, after you've written down the answers to some potential common questions, read them out loud in front of a mirror. I know this sounds silly, but hearing yourself say something out loud can help your brain remember it better, and can also help you feel more confident saying them because you've already said them before. So if you're having a hard time talking about yourself, which is something that a lot of people struggle with job interviews, is they don't feel super comfortable bragging about themselves or talking about themselves, this is a good way to kind of hear yourself saying those things so that when you're doing it in an interview, it feels a little bit more natural since you've already said it out loud at least once before. Tip number 11, prepare some questions of your own. Most of the time at the end of the interview, you'll be asked, so do you have any questions for us? So you'll want to have at least one question. It shows that you're engaged, it shows that you're interested and genuinely curious about the job. And finally, tip number 12, always send a follow-up thank you email either the day of your interview or the very next day. Make sure to get the names of everybody that you met with so that you can include them in the email so it's a little bit more personalized. Sending a follow-up email reminds them, number one, who you are. You can maybe say something that you guys talked about in the interview, like it was a pleasure learning that our parents are from the same town, or something anecdotal that can help them remember you. But also it's just polite, it's professional, and interviewing people is a lot of hard work and time and effort on the company's part as well. So a lot of these people are obviously taking a ton of time out of their day to conduct these interviews, so it's nice to thank them for taking that time. Even if it went horrible and you think you completely blew it, send a follow-up note and say thank you. And if the very worst happens, if you think you totally blew it, just file that terrible interview in your life experience filing cabinet, move on to the next, and knock the next one out of the park. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate the support, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!